In this video, I will show you how to create minimalistic crypto reels, and this one specifically is by 0x100x. I'm super excited about this one because I think these reels look amazing. And if you want the project file or learn even more about this style, then do join the Social Creator Club Pro. Link is in the description. In this pro community, you will get access to 100 hours of course material, basically in-depth tutorials on all the popular styles. You will learn how to get clients yourself, you can get clients through me, and you get access to assets and the editing challenge. Again, links in the description, and now let's jump into it. Now, of course, we're here in After Effects. I'm going to create a new composition and I'm going to use the social media portrait HD preset. Now let's make the duration already a bit longer, maybe something like 30 seconds. And press OK. Now we're going to start creating a graph, and the easiest way to do this is to just go to the rectangle tool, make sure the stroke is set to none, press OK, and then we can click on the fill and we can set this to a linear gradient, press OK, and click on the gradient color, and now you can choose whatever you like. In this case we can of course make it green, make it go from a bit of a lighter green to a darker green. Now I'm just going to draw 5 bars, so this is going to be the first one. Now we're going to open this rectangle and go into this gradient fill. You can see these handles here, we can drag those out a bit and make it a bit more pretty, maybe something like this. We can always adjust the colors later on. Now we need 5 more of these, so I'm just going to select the shape, press Command D or Control D on Windows to duplicate it, and then we move it over by holding Shift, and then you can just align it with it. You can also, if you let go of Shift and hold Command or Control on Windows, it will snap to the edge. That's really nice, so it's nicely aligned. Now we can do this 3 more times, so 1, 2, and 3. Now as you can see, they're not straight, so we can just select all of them, go to the align and make sure it's centered, align layers to selection and then center it. As you can see, nice and straight. Now I'm going to select them all, I'm going to move them a bit more to the center, something like this. And this is our first step. I might adjust these colors a bit. Maybe of the left one, I'm going to make it a bit darker. Same with the second one. You can also change the colors if you want to, but this already looks really cool. Now let's create the line. I'm just going to go to the pen tool. I'm going to make sure the fill is set to solid color, press OK, and change the solid color fill to a black background, press OK. And then the stroke I'm gonna set to really like a light whitish, something like this, press OK. And then the stroke in pixels, maybe 3 or 4. We can adjust this later on, but this is fine for now. I'm gonna zoom in a bit and I'm gonna hold space to move my canvas around. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that there's points on every square. So I'm going to start here on the left, I'm going to set a point, then I'm going to go here to the middle, I'm going to make it around here, then maybe a bit up, and then maybe a bit down, maybe something like this. Then I'm just going to finish it outside of the screen, make sure we connect these 2 points so the start and the end is the same, and there we go, something like this. Cool, this is a nice start. Maybe I'm gonna make the stroke even a bit smaller, 3 pixels. And I'm also gonna select all of these at the bottom and I'm gonna make it a bit larger so we have a bit more room to play with, something like this. Cool, now I'm just gonna go to Layer, New, Solid, and I'm gonna add a black solid to this, press OK. Now I'm gonna use the ellipse tool by clicking on the shape tool and holding your mouse down and clicking on ellipse. And then I'm just gonna draw a ellipse shape, something like this. Hold space to move it a bit and make sure it covers the area somewhat. And we can always adjust this a bit later on, but I think this looks quite nice, maybe a bit smaller even, something like this. Then I'm gonna change the mask to subtract. I'm going to go into this mask and I'm going to feather it by a lot. Let's make this even a bit more thin. And you can also change the expansion to be lower to adjust the vignette almost. But this works quite nicely, as you can see. Cool. And now we can already add the animation. So now one thing to do is we'll add 2 points, basically dots. And we can just do that by using the ellipse tool. Make sure the fill is set to white, press OK, and the stroke is set to none, press OK. And now I can just hold Shift and drag this out to make like a small dot, something like this. Doesn't have to be too crazy. Go to V for the selection tool. You can also click on the selection tool. And we can move this around. And I'm going to press T for transparency to basically dial this down a bit. Now let's make sure our vignette is above our shape layer that we just created, and I'm going to animate it. So first thing is I'm going to animate this circle. Let's go to the beginning and maybe press P for position, set a keyframe, and let's move this up to maybe something like here. and we'll adjust the vignette a bit later on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the line that we created. We can also rename this by pressing enter and typing in here line. And then I'm going to go to the pen tool. I'm going to open the line and I'm going to go into the contents, into the shape and into the path. And we'll set a keyframe for the path. And now the cool thing is that we can just adjust one of these keyframes. You can also go to the selection tool now to select one of these keyframes, to select one of these points that we created. And basically what we do is once this circle is up, we want to animate the path with it. So let's make sure that this path keyframe is the same as the circle that we created that starts at the same time. Go into the path, select the point that you want to adjust. In this case, this one. Hold shift to make sure that it goes straight up. And then what we can do is with the other ones is select these and move them down. Hold shift again to move them straight down. Same with this one, and also hold shift. Really, really dope. Now I'm not too happy with the vignette. I'm gonna adjust it a bit because it's blocking our animation. So let's select the vignette and I'm just gonna select the top point and I'm gonna hold shift and drag that up a bit so we can see more of the top. As you can see, basically it's sort of like an egg shape. Then we already have this really cool animation. Now, of course, we can add motion blur to this, select these keyframes and hit F9 on your keyboard or right click and easy ease to make it a bit more smooth. We can also go into the graph editor and make it even smoother, but I think actually this is pretty fine. Now let's add the text animation. I'm gonna go to the text tool and this is really easy. We can just type here our text. So let's click here. We can type here now and let's change this to a normal font, maybe something like medium or even regular. Let's move this a bit. I'm gonna make this a bit smaller, something like this. And then you can even link it to the circle that we created. So basically we'll animate with it. Now, of course, we also want to animate the text. So I'm just going to go into the text again, and then animate the position. So click on animate position, and I'm also going to add the property opacity. Perfect. Let's set the position to maybe something like 40, 43, something like that. Set the opacity to 0. Go into the range selector and go into advanced. I'm going to quickly change the settings here. So the shape I'm going to set to ramp up and the ease low I'm going to set to 100%. And then basically I'm going to keyframe the offset. I want to have it go from -100 to 100. And this is a quick trick to make your animations a bit more smooth. It will really like smooth in and ease in, and it will make it look a bit cooler in my opinion. So we can drag this out. We don't even have to easy ease it. And as you can see, this animation already looks super, super smooth. And of course we can just copy this text over later on. Now, one thing we're missing is also a dot at the bottom. And of course we can just duplicate the circle that we created. We just need to adjust the position, of course. So duplicate the shape layer by pressing Command D or Control D on Windows. Then go into the position and let's turn off the keyframes. And you go into the position by pressing P. Really important to remember these keyboard shortcuts. And now we can just drag this to the bottom where we want it. Now, one thing is different here. I'm going to press T for the transparency, set it to 100%. Now you can add a deep glow or a normal glow. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click on our shape layer. I'm going to go to layer styles and I'm using a outer glow. And this will all make sense in a bit. If we go into the outer glow, we can change the color to be a bit more on the green side, something like this. Okay. Set the blend mode to normal. Let's zoom in a bit. I'm going to change the opacity to 100%. Then I'm going to increase the size by a lot, something like this. And I'm going to adjust the color even a bit. So it's even a bit more green, something like this. Press OK. You will get this really nice soft glow. Again, a deep glow would also work. And we can even drag this on top of our vignette so it doesn't get affected by our vignette that much. Looks super, super dope. Now for the text, we can just select the other text. Command D, Control D on Windows, drag this over. And of course, we need to parent this to this shape layer too, and not to this shape. So this one is linked to this circle and not to the other circle. And of course, we also might have to move it a bit so the timing is a bit different. That looks cool. For the circle that we created itself, we can also just click on it, press S for scale and set a keyframe. Let's go to the beginning a bit and let's scale this down. Now that I did this, I also see that we don't even have to parent it. So let's unparent it by clicking on the text and setting it to none. And I think that looks even better. Nice. Of course, we can easy ease this by right clicking Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease or hitting F9 on your keyboard. If we quickly play this, this looks super cool. Really, really clean. Now the transitions are quite hard. If you go through it frame by frame, you can see that it's hard cuts, basically hard movements. But because there is continuous movements, it will still look smooth. And we're going to do that now. So for example, you can cut everything off now. We're not going to do that. We're we're just going to make sure that there's some animation in this. So I'm just going to select the lines again, and I'm going to go do what we did before, go into this line and click on the path. I'm going to set a keyframe by clicking on the add keyframe icon, go a bit further, and then let's flatten this line a bit. So let's move this a bit, let's move this a bit, and maybe let's move this a bit, something like this. That's cool. Now, of course, as you can see, we still have to move the rest with it too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the first keyframe that we set, and I'm just going to select all of the elements that I want to animate. That's the now, that's this circle, and that's this circle. And I'm going to press P for position, set a keyframe. So we basically have 3 keyframes here on the first point of the line. And then when we go to the second point of the line, we need to move everything, of course. So we can just go through it. First, this one, this is the circle. Let's move this down. And now the word now is already linked to this. So that's nice. We don't have to animate that one. Now for this one, we unlink these. So we do have to do these separately. So we can do first the circle, hold shift to make sure that it just goes straight up. Align this like that. And then the word now, we're going to do the same thing. Click on that, hold shift, drag that up, just to make sure that this is the same animation. Now, of course, we're going to select these keyframes and right click Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease, so they all animate the same. And now the trick is to basically select all of these keyframes, and I'm going to make them quite quick. So basically this moves almost in a couple of frames. And then when this happens, we go to the next animation. Now we can do this in multiple ways. We can cut it all off, or we can just create a new black solid. So we can just go to layer, new solid, and make sure this is a black solid and press OK, press OK. And then let's cut this off by holding Alt and then left bracket. And you can also just drag this out if you want to do it manually. And if we quickly preview this, you will see that it actually looks quite clean and quite smooth because there's movement here. It basically cuts it off right when there's movement, and then we'll just go to the next scene. And for the next scene, I'm just going to grab one of these texts that we created. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to move that on top of the black solid that we created so we can see the text. I'm going to press P for position and make sure this position keyframes are off. And I'm going to go to the Align tab. I'm going to center it, and I'm going to center it. Let's go back to the properties, and I'm going to make it a bit more big, and we can type the text here. Here's the truth. Maybe make it a bit smaller by selecting it all. Then we can select the last word, and we can also change the fill of that to be like a darker green. Press OK. Perfect. Nice. And the cool thing is there is already an animation on this. Press U to see our keyframes. And as you can see, we have this range selector. Now, as you can see, this goes from bottom to top. We can actually do that, but I want it now in this scene to go from right to left. And the easiest way to do this is to collapse the text and open it again, and then just adjusting the position parameters. So here we have 0.0 and 4.3. The first one is the horizontal value and the other one is the vertical value. We changed this before to 43 because we wanted to have it from the bottom. If we increase this, as you can see, it will come really far from the bottom, but let's set this to 0 because now we want to animate the horizontal axis. So if we change this to, for example, something like 100, this will already have the same type of animation, and I'm actually really happy with this. And for the next transition, I'm just going to press P for position, set a keyframe, and not even when the animation is done, we'll just move it a bit to the right, just a bit like this. Of course, select the keyframes, right click on them, Keyframe Assistant, and then Easy Ease. Now, right here in the middle, we're going to create our new scene, and I'm not going to create a new black solid for this since we don't have that much layers to work with anyway. So we can just hold Alt and then hit the right bracket to cut this off. So we'll basically just go to the right and then it will disappear. Cool. Now for the next scene, I want to add another line animation. And why create a new line if you already created one? So let's just select the line that we created before. And I also want the vignette that we created before, which should be this one. I'm going to press Command D or Control D on Windows. And I'm going to make sure this is dragged up so we can see these layers again. Cool. Now let's move these more to the left so we can see the animation that we have already. And maybe also move them down a bit so it's more aligned with the text. And now the only thing we have to do is go to P for position, set a keyframe, and just drag these keyframes out a bit and then move these from right to left. Now, as you might be able to see, we'll now see this visible line. This is because of the graph that we created before. And there's a super easy fix for this. We can just make a simple mask by clicking on the line, going into the rounded rectangle tool, and just make sure that the tool creates mask option is selected. And I'm just going to create a quick mask to just make sure that we only see the line, something like this, and that will fix our issue. Now I also want the line to only be visible once the text is gone. So let's select the line and the black solid, and let's move this a bit so it's just here when the line goes out. Now I need to adjust my mask a bit. So let's go to the mask and the selection tool. Let's double click on the mask, and I'm gonna drag this out a bit so you at least see the bottom too. Now it's quite harsh, as you can see. There's hard cuts, but because of the flow, this text goes to the right and the graph goes to the left. It actually looks super nice. I would even argue if we animate this from the left, it maybe even look better. We can try that out too by selecting them both and moving them from left to right instead of from right to left. Let's quickly preview that. I think this is even cleaner. I think the animation should start a bit earlier, so it's not ramping up, but it's already animating. Super, super clean. I really like it. Now, I don't like this right part where we can already see that it's visible. We can just, again, go to the mask, double click on the mask and adjust it a bit. And now for the next scene, we're going to make a cool dotted line animation. I'm super excited. Now, first, I'm going to make these glowing orbs, and I'm going to make those by using the ellipse tool again. Now, the difference is that I'm going to turn the fill to none, and I'm going to turn the stroke to a green color, something like this. Press OK. 3 pixels should be fine. And now we can just draw a circle, hold shift to make the circle. And then I'm going to go to effects and presets. I'm first going to add a Gaussian blur to this to basically blur this circle. And then I'm going to go to the effects and presets, and I'm going to add a glow. You can also add a deep glow, but a normal glow should also work. This already looks quite cool. But of course, what we can do is just duplicate it a couple times to make it even harsher. And you can also increase the radius every time a bit. So let's change this to 15. Duplicate it again by pressing Command D or Control D on Windows, and then setting this to maybe 30. And if you want to dial down the circle a bit anyway, we can also go to T for transparency and just making it a bit less harsh. I'm gonna maybe duplicate it one more time and then increasing the radius by a lot, and going back to our blurriness, maybe setting that to 2 or maybe even disabling it. I don't think we need it that much. This looks quite cool. Now to animate this, I'm just going to press S for scale and then just scale it up. So basically that it scales from 0 to 100 and then quite smooth. So just select these keyframes, keyframe assistant, easy ease. And then once it's fully 100%, then it's just going to go down to 0. And this will go quite quick. So let's move these a bit, change the timing a bit. So it slowly goes up and then goes down quite quick. It almost gets sucked away. That's really nice, cool. Now, of course, add motion blur to this to make it even more pretty. And we can just duplicate this one to be, for example, at the bottom. We can already do that by pressing Control D on Windows, Command D on Mac. And let's move this to the bottom, for example, here. So we also know where we're going to add the dotted line. Now, a lot of these minimalistic reels use dotted lines, so I think that's a great effect to master. I'm just going to go to the pen tool. So I have the pen tool selected. Make sure nothing is selected here and change the stroke to white. And then I'm going to make the stroke pixels, maybe even 2 pixels or maybe even 1. Let's see, we can change this later on. And then I'm going to add my first line. I'm just going to click here and hold shift to make my first line. And then we can also see if this is too thick. Actually, I think it's quite nice. Maybe I'm going to set it to 1 pixels even. Make sure nothing is selected so we can see what this looks like. It looks quite cool. I think it looks nice. So this is really dope. Now I can go into this shape, I can go into the contents and into the shape, then into the stroke. I can click on the plus next to the dashes. This will add dashes to it, and I think this setting is already quite nice, but you can change the dashes too if you want to make them longer, or if you want to make them a bit thinner, you can also do that. I would say something around 10 would work. Now I might also change the color so it's a bit darker, basically something like this. Press OK. That looks really clean. And now to animate it, it's as easy as going to the add button here, click on that arrow and click on the trim paths. Then go into the trim paths and we can animate the end super easy. So we can just set a keyframe, drag this out and then set it here to 0. So it goes from 0 to 100 and this will just add this really simple animation. Now while we're in here, we can actually click on the path and press Ctrl D or Command D on Mac. This will duplicate this path. This means that if we now select this end, we can just drag this out and we can create our other path, center it here in the center, something like this. Let's move this to the bottom around here. That's cool. If you hold shift, you can actually make it snap so it's centered. You can also use rulers for this, but I'm just going to do it by eye and by hand. And we need to do this one more time. So Command D or Mac, Control D on Windows. And let's select the top point now. Let's move this to the bottom. And let's maybe set this start point here to the right. Let's see if we can center this a bit. And if this is now not perfectly centered, we can also move this one a bit and select all of these points by just dragging, and then we can move them down a bit. So this is aligned with that. And the cool thing is now using the same properties, and the dashes are already there and the animation is already there, as you can see. So that's super nice. We can also add motion blur to this by enabling the motion blur icon. And then you get something like this, and you can apply this to any animation, but of course, especially for these crypto minimalistic reels. Now, of course, do let me know what you want to see next in the comments. Don't forget to join the Social Creator Club Pro. Link is in the description. You will learn even more about this minimalistic style. Then, of course, don't forget to subscribe. We're going really, really quick, and I'm so excited for it. I just want to thank you all, of course, for all the support, like always. Then thanks for watching, and then I'll see you next time. Bye.